Okay, the 22nd of September in the evening, and I wanted to make general statements rather than specific things about to my children. I want to say this to my children before I die, so they can't say, well, he never said this or that. I love all my kids. If any of them showed up on my doorstep and said, gee, Dad, I don't have a place to live and I'm hungry, of course I would bring them in and feed them. Some of my children have no education, GED, and then I've got other children that have MBA. So I have a variety. I have intelligence down to my autistic son who has an IQ of 52. What I want to say is that when children are small, you kind of have control of them. When a 2-year-old jumps up and down and says, I'm not going to do it, you can kind of pick a 2-year-old up and say, yeah, you are going to get in the car and do it. When they're 28, it's very hard to pick up a child and say, you're going to get into the car. The point I'm making is that my attitude and my feelings about fatherhood is that when a child is 11, 12, under, they're dependent. They're very, very dependent for their food, their housing, their clothing, their transportation, their medical, their dental, and pretty much their opinions are your opinions. However, now at 63, 64 years old, I've come to the conclusion that as children go into those late teens and into college and marriages and become influenced by a new mate who had a different father and a different mother, and of course people are going to compare, gee, my dad was better than your dad kind of thing. What I'm trying to say in the most succinct way that I can is that your children, or at least my children, have become individuals. Their likes, their dislikes, their religion, their finances are very different than mine. And if I try to force on them my ideas of spirituality or church, or my ideas of which cars are the best to buy and the best place to live and what jobs they should have and what majors in college they should have, I do them a great disservice. And basically, they do me a great disservice when they come to me and say, gee, you don't believe the way I do, you don't think the way I do, and you don't have the same value system. Well, you know what? They're right. I don't have to have the same value system, and neither do they. I'm not running their lives. I've been a very, very good father, and they want to marry illegal aliens, which one of my daughters did, fine. If they want to marry, divorced people, fine. I don't regulate their lives, and I try to give them any opportunities or advice if they ask for it, but I give them their freedom and love them anyway. Do they do the same for me? The answer is no. The answer is dead no. I've got to think like they think. I've got to belong to their religion and their spiritual realm. I've got to raise their grandchildren the way I raised them. And it's totally different. It's totally different. And so what I'm trying to say, and perhaps in a poor manner, is I'm sick and tired of living my life for other people. I lived my life for the Mormon cult for almost 50 years. And I didn't do what I wanted to do. My talents and my abilities and my free agency and my free thinking were all stifled, if not crushed out. My social ability to get along with other people, didn't have to develop any of those things. A cult is a closed community, and as long as you're doing what the closed community cult wants you to do, you're accepted. You're in it. So I guess what I'm saying to my children, and perhaps, I'll die in a year or tomorrow or fall on the floor while the camera's on, I have a right to live my life, and I'm not going to be your kid's punching bag. You don't like my religion, you don't like the way I speak, you don't like my mental illness, you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to deal with it. You can pretend that James Bond is your father, or the Pope, or the Mormon prophet. I don't care who you pretend your father is. You're trapped. You've got half of my genes, every one of you, in your body. And there's nothing you're going to be able to ever do in this life about that. So I have my freedom now. Being an atheist, I'm not afraid of death. Being free to come and go and do the things that I find important, I do because I'm a good person. Not because I'm getting Jesus points and trying to get into heaven or the celestial kingdom, as Mormons would say. I don't want gold roads and a mansion. You know, Jesus said, my Father's house has many mansions. If I was the crook on the cross, I would have said, fine, you got good real estate, I don't care. I just want a little small place. That's the way I am. I don't care what other people want. I'm free. I'm free to think. I'm free to speak. I'm free to post. I'm in a free country. And it's taken me many years being out of that cult to develop some of my personality and some of my likes and some of my dislikes. And that's happening every day. Certainly death is going to cut that short. But you, as my kids, can listen to my voice for eternity, your eternity. I don't care what you think of me. It's important what I think of myself. If there's shortcomings in my fatherhood in your mind, that's fine. I can't erase that. There's shortcomings in many of you kids in my mind. You can't erase that either. I've come to a point in my spirituality to learn to accept. One child I have is a Jehovah's Witness. Several of them are inactive Mormons. Some are active Mormons. I treat them all basically the same. And it's not phony. If that's what they want to be, I find ways of loving around them. So let this video be some of perhaps my last voice to my children, that I'm not going to be your whipping boy. I'm not going to be your reason that your life has been a failure or has been less successful than you wanted to be. You bring your intelligence to life and your skills and your hobbies and your habits. And you also bring your motivation. And I'll tell you right now, I've got a couple of kids that are as lazy as a rock. And they're not doing very well in this environment. That isn't my fault. I didn't teach my kids to be lazy. I usually worked 2 jobs all the years I had families. So when they look at me and say, oh, Dad, you were lazy, I learned to be lazy from you, that's not true. Some of my kids are just born lazy. Some of them are born with more intelligence than others. They want to compare themselves to each other. I don't care. But my love and my support of each one, I don't care if they're stupid. I still help them the best that I can. And if they're highly intelligent, I help them the same way. So for kids to turn around and blame their mother or their father for their bad life, or, gee, I was abused. Well, now, certainly, if you were sexually abused or you were beat with a chain every day for 30 years, you've been abused. But you have to put abuse and discipline in perspective. I raised my kids in the late 60s and early 70s. There were things back then that were perfectly acceptable. My grandfather, his father beat him with a switch from a tree. That was perfectly acceptable back in the late 1800s. So when I was raising kids, spanking was very common. I didn't spank much. Michelle never got a spanking. Let me think. Michelle never got a spanking. Dan never got a spanking. Amy never got a spanking. Monica never got a spanking. Rebecca never got a spanking. Abigail, never. And Allison, never. And Aaron, the retarded boy, autistic, he never got a spanking. And there were a couple of my kids that they're lucky they only got spankings, that they had done some kind of atrocious things. But be that as it may, when we look at people's lives and look back on our own lives, we have to put it into perspective. We have to know what the time frame was, what are the circumstances, what are the positive, the negative, what were the stressors on the parents, what was the marriage like. All of those things are in the formula to decide how that parent treated us. So let me summarize that I don't care what my kids think of me, and I don't care if they have contact with me. They don't control my life. The Mormon Church doesn't control my life. I control my life, and I'm happy about that, and thrilled about that, and I have a good life. I go where I want, do what I want. I have enough money to do whatever I want, and so let them suffer and shun. And if you're not knowing that someone's shunning you, how does that hurt you? It doesn't. It makes the shunner look like an idiot. So I'll go ahead and close this tape, and my kids can play this over and over for them and their grandkids, that we're not going to have the tail wagging the dog here. I'm the dog, and the kids are the tail. So that's the end of my tale. Thanks.